Hey everyone, it's Arfan with Automate Scale, and I am back with another expert interview. And I'm super excited to have Teresa McCloy here. Teresa, how are you doing today?
I am doing wonderful. It's going to be so much fun.
Awesome. Yes, I'm excited. So Teresa is someone I met before I even started my agency. She did a presentation and I was just taking notes. I had pages and pages of notes, and it's something that I still reference today. My calendar, we'll talk about this in the interview, but my calendar still operates with a lot of stuff that she taught way back in 2019. So I am super excited. When I say I'm giddy, I'm a little giddy. And we were talking before we even started for about 15 minutes of just nerd techie stuff, and it was like, hey, this is also one of my people, so I'm excited. So before I get carried away, Teresa, I would love for you to take a few minutes to just introduce yourself, tell us about who you are, what you do, and some of the things you're really passionate about right now in your journey.
Oh, thank you. So I work in the coaching space for the most part, but I also do a lot of keynote speaking and those types of things. I have a company called the Real Life Process, and we kind of operate at this point in time. So 2019, we were just kind of a baby business when we first met, but
Yeah.
now here in 2024, we actually kind of operate around three different pillars. We work with a lot of business owners, both small business owners and brick and mortar and
Mm,
people online, entrepreneurs. We also certify other coaches in the work that we do. So we have a life management kind of rule of life process, which is one of the things you heard me speak about way back when. And I
yeah.
wrote a book about that in 2022 called Do What Matters, Live from Rest, Not Rush. And so since 2022, actually we started certifying coaches back in 2020 during, the wonderful COVID years of what are we all going to do? And so we have about almost 80 coaches around the world that use our content and the work they do as coaches and consultants. And then we kind of have a third product business that is a life mapping tool that we
Mm,
actually merged with we purchased a company last year, and we have a tool that's more on the faith side of things, that's a life mapping tool,
mm.
to help you just discover your story and kind of where God's at in it. So that's the three pillars, I call them. We do a little bit of everything, but they're all interrelated, and I love every minute of it.
I love that, and that's awesome. A lot of my audience who will be listening to this are faith-based, so they're also going to appreciate just the fact of what you're going to be speaking about today. Um,
Absolutely.
so um, I am like super excited again, like I mentioned, because you have a wealth of knowledge, and not only that, like your real life process, it actually incorporates like reframing and changing some of the big things that people have kind of pushed for a lot of young entrepreneurs. And really, when we look back, it's like, whoa, wait, if you keep going that route, you're not. It's tough to be successful, and I think it's also one of the reasons why so many people fail is because they go about this process incorrectly. So. I definitely want to dive in today. And before we started, you told me your topic is going to be living from rest, not rush. And I feel that especially coming out of the pandemic and moving into now, this is even more of an important topic. So,
Yes, it is.
um, why do you feel it's so important to really live from rest and not rush? What is the underlying the foundation of this?
Well, I think for me, I walked that story of living in a
Mm,
place of rush. Some of it was put up on me just by some circumstances in my life story. And I talk about those things very openly. I write about in my book that we lost our son to heroin addiction in 2017. And so that kind of 10-year journey back in my 50s, I'm 62, almost 63 years old. And so back in that decade, I was really living with my hair on fire,
mm,
just trying to control a lot of things in my life. Also, from a work perspective, like work was my go to. And I think when we find things that we are passionate about and we love, at that point in time, I was serving in the ministry space, but I'd done lots of entrepreneurial businesses. And that was always kind of my go-to. It was my coping behavior was like just my success and how much I
mm.
could, turn something around and build something from nothing. And I still love that.
Yeah.
I just do it from a different place. And those years, struggle with our son and a lot of things that were going on within our family dynamic totally reframed me. And I said, I can't live this way anymore. There has to be a different way. Some of your audience might be familiar, not everybody is, because it's kind of a more spiritual formation term, but there's a term that's used called rule of life. What are you going to create? What's your rule of life? It goes clear back to like, the monks' times of, how do you live? What do you do every day?
Yeah.
And so what I wanted to create was kind of a modern day rule of life. If people really got up on the balcony and said, this is what matters to me. These are my needs, my values. These are the areas in my life that are important to me. And we name some of those things and give language to it,
Yeah.
including our calendar and our time. How are we going to steward our time well, not just live it because of the way somebody says. So those are kind of some of the tools I began putting together. It was really much of our work does. It came out of my own need. And then out of that need came other people going, I have that need too. Could you teach me or show me or coach me, or could I use your things in the work that I do? And that kind of became the Real Life Process, business and company that we have now. But that idea of rest, though, it's kind of the buzzword right now. I don't know if you've
Yeah.
noticed that. It's
Yeah,
like everybody's
absolutely.
talking about rest.
Yeah.
Everybody's talking about it since we came out of the pandemic. I really didn't choose it for that reason. I really see rest as kind of four things, and we could talk about those if you want, but it's healthy relationships. How healthy are my relationships? Do I understand all the energy that I've been given by God's design? My intelligence, my thinking energy, my emotional energy, and this body that we live in. So head, heart,
Yeah.
body connection. So that's the E, the energy. So, energy, relationships. Intentional slowing is the S, and then purposeful time is the T. So if I can check in with myself, are my relationships healthy? Am I living from head, heart, body? Do I know how to intentionally slow down and step back on a weekly, quarterly basis? And then am I really purposeful in that management and stewarding of time? Those are things that are tangible. Because when we
Yeah.
just say go live from rest, people are like, oh, you mean I get to take a vacation?
That's exactly, yeah, it's
No,
like
it's
it's a little
internal.
confusing.
Rest is something you carry with you all the time. So I
Hmm.
can get a lot done. I'm a very productive person. I used to be productive in a rush way, like check all
Mm.
the boxes, how much I can get done. Now I'm productive from a place that is a restful place that I carry inside of me. Two totally different things.
I love that. I love that. And to back up to something you were saying, like I heard this from Ed Milet, which is a podcaster, YouTuber. I don't know the coin for him, but it's one of those things where it's like we're always most qualified to help the people we once were because we feel that pain truly, right? We feel that pain
Absolutely.
truly. So like
Yeah.
when you broke all this down and just the whole thing of rest, like that comes up so much. And I've been talking to some people, just even finding out what they do for self-care and how they take care of themselves. And the concept of rest is so foreign to some of the folks I'm talking to, especially those who are younger, where they never had examples of parents or grandparents or anyone in their world who actually truly rested, who actually looked at, like you mentioned, the relationships, the energy that we have in our mind, our body, our God-given talents, taking time to slow down. Like slowing down could be something that's considered like what are you doing? Oh my gosh, slowing down.
Yes.
You're not supposed to. You could slow down when you're retired or when you're old or when you're, the
Well,
one
and
I
that's
hate the most is when you're
usually
dead.
what we saw modeled, right? We usually, at least in my generation, my
Yeah.
parents, and work was your identity. And
Hmm.
so, you know, when we meet people, a lot of times we'll say, hi, great to meet you. I mean, I just said it to you before we started recording, right? I'm like, so what are you doing now? Like what's
Yeah.
the work that you're doing? Because I knew what you were doing then, but I wasn't sure what you were doing now. And so we often, unfortunately, identify ourselves by our work. And when we find our identity there, we don't know how to stop doing that identity. So if we slow
Hmm.
down, ooh, do we lose a part of ourselves? Slowing can be as simple as you sit outside in the morning and drink your cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And, or one of my favorite things is getting in my hot tub, or not turning on any music or podcast or a book when you get in your car. Like,
Hmm.
it's a little bit of a stillness place that you go. It could be something as big as, a true vacation. That's slowing, right? A different routine. Having a day of rest. I'm a big believer in a day of Sabbath rest.
Hmm.
All those things are part of slowing. And we take small little steps to build those into our lives and into, our calendars, so to speak. And none of these things are just like, oh, I got to do them all at once.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know about you, but if my relationships and all of these things were places I wasn't doing well when our son was in the worst of his addiction, my relationship with him wasn't good. I was very
Mm.
codependent. Um, so if your relationships are healthy, at least 80% healthy, I always say, nothing's
Yeah.
perfect. Whether that's your
100%.
marriage, your relationship with your adult children, your relationship with your parents, your coworkers, whatever that might be, if you feel that tension or whatever, that really keeps your cortisol level high and it keeps your brain firing way too much. You can feel that tension and knot in your stomach. All of those things, you're just not going to feel at peace or at rest. So those are signals that I think we get. That's like, might want to pay attention.
And a lot of us miss that. And it's like this when we look at it, there's nothing that's very loud externally that's screaming at us like, hey, I'm stressed and my cortisol's like I'm freaking out, right? It's all a lot of times we have the internal dialogue which we tend to want to ignore or worse, just repress. And it can
Yes.
really come out in other negative ways affecting our relationships now
Yeah.
negatively where it's not healthy or strong in the way that we really want or desire to. We can have that internal desire to
Yeah.
do that. So let me ask you a question, right?
Yeah.
So
Sure.
someone now that is a lot of my audience sometimes are in the early phases where they're still working a job, whether it's part-time or full-time, and they're starting their business on the side, right? And they're
Uh-huh.
really going down the route, and they hear a lot of this, like, side hustle, get it done. So the concept of rest even goes further out the window because now instead of looking at their day where, hey, I'm going to work 8, 9 hours, they're working 8, 9 hours, they're coming home and then putting into their work another 4 or 5 hours. What
Right.
do you say? Where does someone like this, where do they start in your opinion in terms of like getting to be able to get to a place of true rest?
Oh, that's a great question. So I think there's a couple places we could talk about. I think the first one might be, what's the story you're telling yourself in your head? So
Mm,
what's the language that you use? I did not realize as I've come into this space and the work that I do now, how important words are and the power of
yes,
the words
yes.
that we tell ourselves and the language that we develop. So, whether that's breath prayer, whether that's mantras, whether that's how we journal about our lives, all of those things matter. And so, one of the words that I'm really working on helping people reframe is this idea that I have a side hustle, right?
Oh,
Like,
wow.
oh, I got a side hustle. You walk up to somebody, one of your friends, you're meeting them out for coffee or whatever, and you're like, hey, what are you doing now? Oh, well, I'm working here, but I got a side hustle. I'm
Yeah,
doing this. And that mindset is such a trigger word to me, for lack of a better way to describe it, because hustle in itself means it's hard. Like I've
mm,
got to hustle and work, and this is hard, and the energy. So you can hear the energy shifts. There's nothing about that that feels slowing. It
that's
also
right.
feels like I have to fit it in my time in the cracks and crevices, that it's not purposeful. So it
Wow.
hits all of the E, the S, and the T of rest. So it might even flow into relationship destroying, because if it feels like a side hustle and you happen to be married, um, it could feel like, well, this side hustle is really taking away from relationships or for my for my little ones that are in my home, or from my time with my parent, whatever that might be. Now it's starting to take over my life. And then we resent the actual business that we're building, that we were
Mm,
hoping would bring us freedom.
wow, that's powerful.
And, so when we start resenting the thing that we thought was going to be, it was a pain point, we wanted to help others with it, or we wanted to bring our best self into the world through the skill set that we have. And now we're resenting it because we think of it as a hustle. It's just a
Hmm.
reframe. I would rather see people say, well, I work full time at XYZ, and then I have a part-time business
That's yeah.
doing XYZ.
That those
Because
words just sound even better. Just saying that out
don't they
loud,
sound
the
so much more
energy, the way it
professional?
feels. Yeah,
Oh, so much more
absolutely.
professional. Like, if you really want to be taken seriously in the world, and I say this to people that have a part-time business all the time, if you want to be taken seriously, if you want people to hire you and pay you the same money they pay anybody else in the market, then treat it like a business
Yes.
and
Yes.
call it a business. That's what it is. And decide up front. I'm a big believer in pre-decision. Anything we can
Pre-decision.
pre-decide, uh, I don't know if that's in the dictionary. It's a term that a phrase that I've coined, I guess.
I like
Anything that
it.
we can pre-decide takes the pressure off of deciding it in the moment when we're in an emotional state. For
Hmm.
example, for many of the listeners in this audience that are listening to the podcast, you come home from work, it's 4 or 5 in the afternoon, whatever, and you're sitting there going, gosh, I really need to work on my part-time business. These are the hours that I have to do it, or it's Saturday or whatever. Pre-decide when your part-time business is open for business.
Ah, I love that
So
reframing.
pre-decide that it is Mondays from 5 to 8 and Saturdays twice a month from this time to this time. Figure out the 10 to 12, 15 hours that you're going to give your part-time business. You could do that every month if you wanted to, depending on your other, job and what you need to do in your other career, and how flexible it is and all of those things. What's also happened for us is many of us are working from home in both businesses,
That's true. That's true.
right? And so that causes another, like, I don't know how to define. And I mean, I'm watching this in my own family, with my son-in-law actually works from home full-time. And then he also has another part-time business. And he struggles sometimes with what hat do I have on when?
Hmm.
We try to fit our part-time business in the cracks and crevices because our other business feels like, oh, we could pick up our laptop and take it with us or whatever it is. I mean, and I know there's people in your audience out there that are getting this right now. They're like, oh my
Yeah,
gosh, this is so me. Like, I go to the coffee shop and I do this for an hour and then I switch over and do my job because it's got a meeting, and then I do this, and then we end up working 12, 14 hours a day
easily,
because
easily.
we're doing all the things. So I just encourage you, if this is you, change your language and then really look at what is realistic for you, because you don't want to miss out on the moments that matter. You'll never get them back. You won't get
Mm.
back dinner around the table with your wife and your young ones. You won't
Wow.
get back, time on the weekends with your family. And I feel like, I'm preaching here, but I'm just saying I've lived the other way and
Yeah.
I have many regrets, of what I gave up. Um, One of my coaches in the book tells a story about missing his father's retirement party
Wow. Wow.
because he was too busy. I
Mm.
tell many stories in the book from my own life of things I missed, um, and really regret that I missed those because I thought I had to do. And so it's that question of, yes, you want a part-time business, and most people that have a part-time business are working to hopefully make that full-time, right?
Make it full
And
time.
get
Yes.
out of and make the switch, but at what cost?
Yeah, and that's very important you say that because a lot of my audience too have, or those even listening would have, made that transition, and that same type of mindset can go into now when they are full time from
Yes.
just doing that 12, 13, 14 hours and operating from a place of hustle. And I think it's like this, the whole, reframing the word, side hustle into something part-time business as an example is great because first, no one likes to be hustled. Right. And I don't never came across someone, but I feel like being hustled today. No, no one does that.
No
Right.
one's signing up for buying
No
from
one's
you.
signing up for that. Yeah. So changing that, all of a sudden, you just increase that level of professionalism and taking the time to also explore what works for you for slowing down. This is something that was challenging, very challenging for me because I was also of that same mindset of, you got to hustle, you got to grind, you got to really put your face to the stone and really get at it. And it took me some time to really start figuring out what exactly is, resonates with me, allows me to slow down. Things like sitting on the porch and having lunch instead of sitting on my phone scrolling on social or something like that.
Oh, I'm
It
with you.
automatically slows you down because the amount of I think the word is dopamine that comes from just being on the phone on social media and getting hit constantly with every 2, 3 seconds, something new, something new, something new, something funny, something exciting. It wrecks us mentally, and being able to
Mhm.
just put that down, take a half hour, enjoy your actual lunch for what it is. And I find I've been more healthier. I feel more full, I'm losing weight,
The
all these
vitamin
different
D
things
that
just
you
doing that.
get, if you're in a place where you can get outside and get that vitamin D, I actually just talked about that this morning with my community. That's one of my commitments this summer is I work out of a co-working space. So, and I have a little private office. And so it's very easy to just, grab my lunch, come back to my desk.
Hmm.
And this is what a lot of us do. When yet, what would be so much better for us is to go walk around the block, in your neighborhood, at your office. Just take that time to get the vitamin D hit rather than the social media hit. Again, that's a thing
Yeah.
of pre-decide. I work a lot in 90 days. I think 90 days are a great way to create new habits, new routines, new rhythms. And so I talk a lot in my work about, the next 90 days. So what if during the summer season or, whatever season it's in, you just go, I'm going to do this for the next 3 months and just see, what the benefits are of
Yeah.
trading this for this. And I put lunch hour on my schedule. A lot of people don't, but
Hmm.
I block it out intentionally. There is a color of, yeah, it's a present block for me.
The present
Um,
block.
yeah, I'm present to my self-care and soul care in that time. And it might mean I have lunch with a friend, right? It
Hmm.
might be that I'm outside eating a sandwich, going to the park, walking around the block, whatever. But that break in the middle of the day is a huge part of slowing. And it's a reset for our brain as we come in and work through the afternoon, no matter which business we're working in.
Yeah, I love that. And when I first came across your work back in 2019, that was one of the areas that really stood out to me when you were breaking down the real life process of really just the managing of our day-to-day calendars and
Hmm.
being intentional. Okay, so a few things that I still practice to this day: deep work and white space
Oh,
are on
beautiful.
on there because it's one of those things where I just notice how much more peace I'm at in my day and how much less rush it feels and how much more I'm able to put a hard stop at the end of my day, transition to now being with my kids and my family. So I would love to
Mhm.
talk to you about that again. Like I mentioned, there's
Sure.
those who are in that phase of I'm still at a job and I'm working my part-time business after I get out of work, or they haven't really made pre-decisions yet. So I hope if you listen to this, start pre-deciding those
Yeah.
days where it's going to be like, hey, I get out at this time. I'm going to be taking X time to work on my part-time business. But I really want to talk about, those who have made that transition, but still in that mindset of hustling and they're
Right.
not really seeing the results and they're starting to feel those like burnouts knocking at the door, right? They
Hmm.
can see their physical health taking a toll. Let's speak to that audience for a few moments and just love your
Sure. So
advice.
it sounds like maybe it'd be helpful. Let me define the T of purposeful time in rest. So when we look at our time differently, and we decide we're going to steward our time rather than manage it, I
Mm.
believe that time is a gift, right? And I don't know when the calendar was invented and when all of a sudden we decided to start like putting lines on a piece of paper and saying from 9 to 10 and 10 to 11 and all of that. But if we would reframe that mindset of, time is a gift and I get to
Hmm.
choose, again, pre-decision, you get to choose how you steward your time and what you choose to put in there. Now, granted,
Love
let's go
that.
back and pick up the piece that, yes, you may have another occupation or career that you don't. You've got to show up at 8, you get off at 3, you get off at 4, whatever.
Hmm.
Obviously, that's not chosen, but you did accept the job position. So at some point in time, you chose it, right? So it's chosen for you and it's managed for you. But when you really do the math problem of how many hours in your week you get to choose, I think there's
Hmm.
168 hours a week. And if you worked a 40-hour work week, that leaves a lot of time that's at your
Yeah,
disposal.
it does.
We waste a lot of it. And so I have a little framework of how I refer to time in 4 different ways. And this doesn't mean you need to add all these things into your calendar. It might just mean looking at your time and going, wow, I do that. And I do this
Hmm.
and I do that. Because the story we're telling ourselves is, I don't have enough time.
Hmm.
And I say, well,
Yeah.
I've got the same amount of time you do. And so does your neighbor, and so does your friend in the cubicle next door, and your wife or your husband or whatever. It's what we choose. So the first one I talk about is present block. Is there places in your calendar that you have time for self-care and soul care? That's the
Hmm.
slowing. It could be 15 minutes if you're a parent with young ones. It could be an hour if you're my age, right? Like it
Yeah.
varies. But
That's
do you
perfect.
have
I
some
was about
time?
to ask how much time do you recommend for something like that?
I
But it
think it's
varies.
ideally it's at least 30 minutes, but not everybody's going to get that, right? So
Yeah.
your 30 minutes could be your commute time. And what do you choose to do with it if you're still driving somewhere? It
Uh,
could be you and your spouse are working on giving each other that time, because one's watching the little ones while you get 30 minutes to sit outside on the porch and drink your coffee or go to the gym. So, exercise, those types of things, taking care of our body, that's being present to ourselves. The second one is people time with people we love and care about, leaning into those important relationships, the R,
yeah. Love that.
blocking time, pre-deciding that those people matter. I'm in a season of caring for my parents right now, and so I have to pre-decide that they get time on my calendar.
Yeah.
Um, and I have to go out 30 days or so and say, this Saturday, this month, I'm going to see my parents, or, this Sunday, I'm going to go spend with them, or I'm going to take off, this evening and go
Mm.
take them to dinner. But I have to pre-decide it. It won't just happen.
Yeah, it was
And
not.
that's something we all just think, well, I told them I loved them once, they still know it, right? I don't have to say it again. Well, that's not true.
Not true, not true at
Quality
all.
time is a real thing for a lot of us,
Oh,
and
yes.
you'll never regret choosing people. So present to yourself, present to others. You can kind of see even the scriptural references here of
Hmm.
it. The scripture actually says, it doesn't say, don't love yourself. It says love others as yourself.
Wow.
We
When you put
miss
that in the
that.
context, it's powerful.
We
And
miss that.
yeah, and right now, I would love everyone to just take a moment to really just feel and like visualize what this look like. Even just these two things alone, presence, just
Mhm.
being presence with yourself, your maker, a time to just breathe and to slow down, even if
Mm.
it's 15, 20 minutes or so, and a time with just people that matter to you, the relationships you want to nurture, the relationships that are valued, like just feel how good that feels energetically. Just even thinking about it, not even doing it, just even thinking about it feels good. So imagine how much more it's going to feel when you actually do it, implement it. I know from my experience, it feels amazing, but just for a moment, just really bring that in because it's a good energy. It's a great energy for sure.
It's a great energy. I'm feeling it, and I teach this stuff and I feel it. So thank you for the pause. And then you can feel a shift uh, for the next two kind of blocks that I refer to, or the ways we look at time. The next one is something I call project blocks. And the reason I call them projects, this is kind of where you really move into that energy and that forward motion of what are you going to accomplish? What is the work? So, what is the work I have to do this week?
Hmm.
And you just refer to it as deep work. What is the big thing that I want to move forward this week? What's the project that I've got to move forward? Now, there's a whole system to this. We won't go into it all, but you pre-decided what that was back at the beginning of the 90 days. So this isn't just
Hmm.
something that every week you dream something up. I'll give the
Mm.
example if you're in a business where you do let's just say web design or something like that, and you need a new website. You're designing a new website. So you pre-decide at the beginning of the 90 days, like, here's all the steps I'm going to need to do to
Yeah.
make this project happen. And then when you come to that deep work, you're just moving through your steps. You don't have to sit there and go, oh, what should I do during this time? You already laid out the plan ahead of
Already
time for this
pre-decided.
project. Yeah, you pre-decided. Same thing, say your project you want to work on is, I want to grow in my relationship with my spouse. You just do a little mind map, is the word I refer to in my book. Just do a little brain dump around that. What would that look like? My spouse and I
Yeah.
feel like we're a little bit distant right now. Man, over the next 90 days, I really want to work on that. What could I do? Well, let's set up a date night, and
Hmm.
let's make sure I get the babysitter. And let's make sure that we're shutting off social media or TV, and we're turning our chairs towards each other 2 nights a week, and we're having 30 minutes of conversation. So see how those are all like actionable steps.
Yeah, I love that.
So even a project around relationships, you're like, man, on Wednesday nights and Thursday nights, we're going to eat dinner in, we're going to prepare a meal, we're going to turn our chairs, or we're going to sit at the table and linger. And it's on my calendar. And that's my project that I'm working on. So this isn't
Yeah.
just work. Projects are your life. They're all
Yes,
those
whole life.
areas that matter to you. Here's where people get stuck, I think, is they think they need to do all the areas in their life at the same time.
Mm.
And you're like, that's overwhelm. Like,
It
I
is.
can't grow spiritually, grow my relationships, manage my money, grow my business. So at the beginning of about every 90 days, what I say is get up on the balcony of your life and say, what feels right for the next 90 days? I'm going to choose 2 to 3 things that are projects I'm working on. Only
Yeah.
2 or 3. If I get those down, we're almost creating habits, right? Routines. Once I get past those, I'm going to get back up on the balcony and look at 2 or 3 more. Maybe it's in the same area because I'm continuing that growth. Or maybe I'm like, it's pretty good. I can put that one on autopilot.
Yeah.
I'm going to go pick something else out of the barrel, right? And so everything belongs, but it's not about balance, it's about harmony.
Love
So
that.
that's projects. That's a whole conversation itself. And then the fourth place of looking at time, and this is the one we all do all the time, is prep blocks. And these
Mm.
are blocks of time to do the everyday, ordinary stuff of life, the to-do list, right? The answer the emails, look at the calendar, go pick up the dry cleaning, go get groceries, run errands. It's stuff that we check off the piece of paper every day. What
Yeah.
happens is we start our days with our prep blocks, not the right place to start, because you'll
Mm.
never get to your present block, your people block,
Hmm.
or your project block, because you started with, it feels good to check the list, but then you get to
Hmm.
the end of the day and you're like, I feel like I just rushed through the day, just checking stuff
Yeah.
off.
Didn't really get much done. Busy, busy day,
Mm-mm. You
unproductive.
got stuff done, but it wasn't the most important things that mattered.
Mm.
It's not that we're not going to have time for that, but it's limiting. 30 minutes at a time. I actually use a timer a lot of times on my phone and say, okay, I'm going to dive into my inbox and do some things for 30 minutes or so. And then I'm going to stop doing that and move to some of the other things. So that's kind of my framework for time. I talk about it all inside the book. And different things. And, but it really is that purposeful time piece of relooking at how we're stewarding our time and giving it some new language that feels life-giving.
Yeah, and I mean, just even thinking about it alone, like I practice a lot of these things, and but just even our conversation now has me thinking about, wait, I can actually go back and improve my calendar because over the years, it went from that period of rush where as I was building the agency and my wife hopped on board, we were both doing 70, 80 hours a week sometime, and
Yep.
even still including some of these to be present to wake up or just 6 o'clock in the morning and just go to the gym and take some time before my day starts has been so tremendous in making me feel better and perform better.
Mhm.
So just even thinking about this, it it's allowing me to now say, okay, I can apply some of these things again to myself, and really just kind of take a good balcony look at my own calendar. So I appreciate you so much breaking all this down for us.
And I would say you mentioned something, and I just want to give people permission to be easy on themselves. That there will be times where you will do 70-hour weeks, 80-hour
Hmm.
weeks. The important part, and this is why I love a 90-day type process, is don't let that become the norm. To do a
Yes.
reset about 3 or 4 times a year of like, whoa, 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 let's step back from life. Used to be we talked a lot about year-long stuff
Yeah.
and setting goals for years and all this stuff. And I really think let's make it a little bit smaller where we get back up on the balcony. It doesn't mean we lose our rule of life and throw it all out and start over, but we just do a little bit of a reset more often so we don't get caught in patterns of behavior, because
Mm,
all of this at its root is behavioral change.
very true.
And so we don't want to get caught in behaviors that 3 years later we're going, how did I get here? Like,
Hmm.
let's so I think what you're feeling even right now is I just need to do a little reset. Just need to do a little, up on the balcony of life, look down a little bit and say, what could I tweak a little here or there? Maybe I need to back this off a little bit, whatever. And but there will be periods where you do go for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, you're pushing to get something done, you're doing something, this is not living in unreality. Reality is sometimes life is hard.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Earlier, about an hour before our actual call started, I was sitting at a 90-day planning meeting with a group, and it was one of those things where afterwards I was like, wait, my entire night, the rest of my night is actually changing quite a bit as we're starting to explore doing alternate schooling for our children and things like that. I was like, I
Right.
need to
Right.
actually go back and look at this again. So our conversation really just kind of
Yeah, it's timely.
added to
And
that.
that's the important part of these resets is things in our life shift and change, right? Like
Hmm.
we're sending kids to school. Maybe we weren't before. We're in a summer season. I remember when my daughter got married, that whole 90 days was about the wedding. We might have a big event.
I
So it's
imagine.
important to look at those things and say, what's reality? If we have a part-time business and we have some big life event, what's reality right now?
Hmm.
And am I saying yes to too many things, trying to promise too many things? That's what sets us up for sometimes can feel like failure. And then we throw it in when it's not what God wanted us to do, right? He really had this as part of his plan. And we kind of quit too soon because we overwhelmed ourselves.
Yeah, I love this. I think this conversation will help a lot of people, those who are already full-time entrepreneurs and just kind of realizing like, hey, there's got to be a better way to do this. Those who are looking to transition and potentially not really giving their full force because they also realize there's a better way to do this. What Teresa shared with us today is a better way to do this. Is a way that feels really good, a way to look and see, wow, I do have the time. The time doesn't control me, but I really get to really control my calendar and look and see what I can pre-decide to do, and it's super
We
important.
do.
So, if you'd like to dive deeper into this, we just really, I think honestly, we just like scratched the surface a little bit
We
of this,
did.
of
We
how
always
this is gonna
do.
go. So you can only do so much in a 45-minute hour conversation, but my intention and my hope is that you actually get a shift and you have a little spark in you to say, wow, I'm going to do things a little differently. And you have a great resource. Teresa here has written a book. So do what matters to live from rest, not rush. And Teresa, tell us how we can get a hand on a copy of this book.
Sure. I mean, the easiest way, just go to your favorite book retailer, whatever that is, whether it's an online retailer or whatever. Amazon, all the things. You can find the book in all those places. You can also check out some other things that we have on our website at the realifeprocess.com. We spell real life with one L, so REALIFE, real life, it's all one word. So realifeprocess.com. And, we have some free needs and values assessments there. We have some other freebies. You can find out more about the book there. And that's a great place to start. If you get your hands on a copy of the book, whether Kindle or a hard copy, in the back of the book, there's a thing that says book resources. And you click on that link, you can find all kinds of things from guide sheets and worksheets and all the bells and whistles of diving more into, creating your real life rule of life, because my real life and your real life are different.
Very
People
much.
say, well, how do I do this? And I say, well, I can give you the framework, but in the end, yours is going to look different than mine. So
Hmm.
it's not this is how to do it, and do it just like me. So have fun. I invite you to explore. And gosh, this has been a fun conversation.
Awesome. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate that. So again, reallifeprocess.com. I'm going to put a link in the show notes in the description below so you can get access to that. Get your hands on a copy of the book, because this is something that I was thankful and fortunate to learn this a little bit early in my entrepreneur journey. But if I learned this even beforehand, before transitioning from employee to entrepreneur, it would have done so much more for my physical and mental health and just my overall peace and energy and the relationships too as well. I'm working now to reconnect and reestablish relationships that I valued so much, that if I had had a conversation with someone like Teresa about, hey, it's just putting in your calendar. You already have the time. Is just putting it in the calendar and really just being intentional about it. My relationships could have been better. So it's one of those things where learn from our journey and apply it to your journey and customize your journey. Because Teresa mentioned mine is very different with young children versus if you're an empty nester and your time and
Mhm.
your energy and your job and things like that are
For
different. So
sure.
definitely check it out, Teresa. Again, thank you so much. You're
Thank
just a
you.
wealth of knowledge. Your energy is amazing, and I just love interacting with you, talking with you. And I think
Thank
this is an
you.
episode that's going to help a lot of my audience, a lot of people.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation, and it's been fun.
All right, everybody. Thank you again so much for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more interviews with just experts all across the board. And I will catch you on the next one. Bye bye, everyone.